Hey guys, how you doing? Trevor DeVal from Me, Myself, and Die here, doing a new little series that I'm calling Post-Session Reflection. So here's the score. I am starting a new game session, a live in-person game session around the table with 3 other players. And I thought it would be interesting after every session to come and do a little video about the experiences I had as a GM for that session, whether that's something I learned about myself as a GM, or whether it's something that worked really well and I can give you tips on, or something that really didn't work and I can give you tips on that. Anything at all might be helpful to those of you who are trying to learn how to GM, or maybe even you old GMs out there like me that just like to watch an old guy like me stumble around every now and then. The game that we are running in person for this particular game is Vampire the Masquerade V5. Now, the thing about this game is I was never into Masquerade when it came out. I knew it existed. I never played it. I had no real interest in it whatsoever until about 2008 when the new World of Darkness came out. That was my first exposure to it as a player and as a GM. Really liked Vampire the Requiem. Thought it was super, super cool. Never much cared for the Masquerade's metaplot or backstory or Gehenna War or Second Inquisition or all that stuff that's happened now. I really prefer the more intimate, isolated, almost claustrophobic version of Vampire the Requiem. So in my game, I'm basically using the Vampire the Requiem setting, although altered somewhat, with the V5 rules, because I really like these new rules, especially the hunger die. I think it's super cool. Anyway, this is not about that. What this is about is organization as a GM. In a vampire game, or any game, really, that you're running, there's going to be NPCs. There's going to be non-player characters. And any GM worth his or her salt wants to make sure that they are properly portraying those characters. Now, that could mean a lot of things. If you're a GM like me, maybe you have the character have a different voice or an accent or something like that. But for those of you who don't do that, for those of you who GM from a more literary style, you just might use very specific descriptors when you're describing the person or how they behave or how they act or whatever the case is. It doesn't matter what your style is, but what does matter is that you have the necessary information at your fingertips to be able to properly portray these characters when you need to portray them. The thing I found, though, is that it's tricky to know what exactly kind of information you need at your fingertips, because it's possible to have too much behind that screen, too much information that kind of gets in each other's way. So here's what I've been doing for this particular game, and those 2 players, you guys know who you are out there. There's two out of the 3 of you watch this channel and are patrons of this channel, so don't watch this. Let's go. Bzz, bzz, bzz. In Vampire the Masquerade, there's a ton of NPCs. And I really wanted to be able to quickly know who the PC was, and more importantly, know how to portray that NPC if the players had any interaction with them. So what I did was I made a little document, super, super easy document. This is just a Word file. This is just a chart, a table on it. First thing you need to know about the NPC is obviously the name. NPC's got to have a name. Next here is clan, which is the type of vampire they are. Just as a side note as well, though I'm talking specifically about vampire here, you still need organizational skills as a GM. Even if you're running something like Dungeon World, right? Or powered by the Apocalypse games like Apocalypse World, or there's a million of them, where there's not a lot of prep involved. There's still stuff that the GM has to know. So, you talk to any Dungeon World GM, and after the 5th or 6th session, they've got a lot of notes about what's going on in the world and the NPCs and the characters and stuff. So no matter what the game is, as a GM, you need to have some understanding of the details of your NPCs. It just makes the game better. So here, as I said, we got the name, the clan, the covenant. Incidentally, this is slightly different from Vampire the Masquerade. Vampire the Masquerade has basically the 2 sects, right? There's the Camarilla and or Camarilla, however you want to say that, and the Anarchs with some Sabbat thrown in there. Vampire the Requiem uses covenants. It's a completely different thing. They've got the Invictus and the Elankeia Sanctum and the Circle of the Crown and Ordo Dracul and the Carthians. But anyway, that's just a little note about that. So you've got the covenant, the character's covenant, then you got the title. In Vampire's case, this is their political title. This is, in this case, this is the character who's the sheriff, the prince's sheriff. Again, important to know. And then we have these things right here. These are basically 4 different types of ways to describe the character. For this, I was using a couple of supplements that I picked up on Drive Through RPG, the links of which are below if you're interested in checking those out. But you can do it however you want. You can use random supplements. I like to randomize stuff because it's fun for me. But the point is, I've got description, motivation, attitude, and appearance, okay? Now, this is a Venn diagram. These things can all overlap. Sometimes you don't need all of these things, but this is just a place to start, right? This is a place to organize your thoughts and to have some way to track who this NPC is that the players are talking to. So this character's description is overbearing, stoic, and threatening. Well, there you go. You have a pretty good sense of who this character is just based on that alone. I could play this character, boom, just based on that. But I wanted to dig a little deeper. So the next one is motivation. What is this particular character's motivation? This is justice. His motivation is justice. Again, I got all of these or most of these from those supplements linked below. Then the attitude, the general attitude of the character. In this case, it's critical. So you're seeing a pattern here. A lot of these are feeding back on themselves, which is fine. And then his appearance is impeccably dressed. So right away, if they run into Rabba Fakir, the Bruja unaligned sheriff, I know right away how to portray him. Overbearing, stoic, threatening. But then I've got justice. So if in the middle of a conversation, if the players wind up asking him something about, if they get some details, if maybe they make a persuasion roll or whatever, and they get some more details about how he might, perceive the prince or the seneschal or whatever the case is, I know that his motivation is justice. So he is trying to preserve the law and all of that kind of stuff. His attitude is critical. So he's going to be extremely, critical of anybody he talks to in most cases. And of course, he's impeccably dressed. That can mean something too. So that's really important. They're just key phrases. That's all they are. They're little key phrases. In the world of voiceover, I'm a professional voice actor for 20 years now. And in the world of voiceover, I have a little tool called the key phrase. And the key phrase means that if I need to remember how to play a character, I have a little phrase that allows me, when I say it, to immediately get into his voice, his bearing the whole bit. So this is kind of like that. These are key words to immediately hook you into how to portray the character. Very simple, but on a handy-dandy table like this, it's easy to keep track. Then I've got connections here. So this is going to be important as things go on. If the sheriff gets involved with one of the player characters' vampires, and they wind up getting into trouble or something, well, now there's a new connection. I know that's going to be important. Or if he has a secret child that he's made, that's going to be in there. And then there's just general kind of notes that is an ongoing document as the sessions go on. So after every session, I go back and I update this in the notes section to say, okay, well, what happened here as pertains to the player characters. For me, it always comes back to the player characters. And that is actually something that I do want to kind of point out as well, is that in a game with lots of NPCs, it can be tempting, especially if you're new at this, to kind of make this a tour de force of your portrayal of NPCs. But always remember, and this is super important, the game's focus should be on the player characters. The NPCs are all expendable. If the players decide that they want to take the spear and kill the sheriff in the middle of Elysium, well, they'll probably be ripped apart, and they've earned that. But the point is, they should be free to make those choices. They should have agency. So just because you have really complex-seeming, detailed NPCs, do not get drunk on that. Don't make your game about your NPCs. But make sure you know who those NPCs are and you know how to play them. That is basically all I have to say about that. This document goes on and on and on. It basically lists all the major players in the vampire world so far. But there's lots of space in between to adjust things on the fly as you go. And also, this is also important. Just because you have an idea for an NPC and you put it down on your chart here, if you find that in play the character, let's say that the sheriff here, they're having a conversation with him, and what happens naturally in the role play is that you realize the sheriff wasn't really representing the concept of justice. Maybe he was representing the concept of revenge. And you think, oh, okay. Well, I mean, there's two ways to look at that. You could think, oh, well, I screwed up. Stupid. Or you could say, you know what? I'm just going to alter that. And now the sheriff is about revenge. only do that once. Only do that at the beginning. Don't just suddenly change their motivations randomly, because the characters, the PCs won't be able to keep track of anybody, and it's gonna feel inconsistent. And consistency is super important to your game. And that's the whole point of this. This is a tool to help you remain consistent as a GM in your portrayal of NPCs. So that's it for the my first little episode here of post-session reflection. Nothing fancy, but I just thought it might be helpful. So let me know if it was helpful. And if you have any further ideas on how to keep your NPCs organized, let me know in the comments below. Maybe we can get a good conversation going. And yeah, I'll see you next time on the next one. Okay.